Cookies done. I think they're actually going to turn out okay. Okay, so last and final video for tonight, I think. And whoops, oh, sorry about that. And that is Germain's marriage. So, as we know, domestic violence often happens behind closed doors, because if anyone treated the way that these people treat their partners, their friends and family would be hitting them upside the head. So people don't do that, not unless it's behind closed doors. So I don't know a lot. I honestly don't even remember seeing any signs or knowing of anyone seeing signs. Probably did. I was a kid. Brendan and Megan and Wesley probably have some traumas for themselves that they've never expressed to me, all that stuff. But what I do know and what I do remember is Gary being in and out of jail quite a lot, and kind of getting the sense that Aunt Germain was done with him, and then she'd go back with him, and all this sort of stuff. Brendan, Megan, and Wesley were born. Two of them were born like right after each other, and then there was a year break, and then the third. So I think it was Brendan, Megan, a year break, and then Wesley, if I remember correctly. It could be Brendan, a year break, then Megan and Wesley. Don't really remember. But anyway, I remember that Aunt Germain had broken up with him, and I remember we were all in Grandma's apartment, and I don't know if the two younger ones were born yet. They might have been, I'm not sure. But I remember Aunt Germain coming in and saying Gary had kidnapped Brendan, and I remember thinking, like, my kid head, oh my god, I'm never going to see my cousin again, and being quite worried about that. I know Grandpa had gone to look for him, found him in the tennis court. So the apartment building had like a tennis court and a pool to the side of it. So I remember Grandpa found him in the tennis court, and I know Grandpa was bleeding, but he had Brendan, and so he was able to get Brendan back from Gary, and I know that I remember for many years after Gary and Aunt Germain broke up, I remember for many years Aunt Germain suffering from what I would suggest now was post-traumatic stress disorder, where she would have to constantly check the doors, check the stove, like in an OCD type of thing, where like constantly going to run to check the doors, check the stove, to make sure that everything was okay, before she could go to bed. I remember the kids freaking out and crying all the time whenever, like, he would call them and say, yeah, I'm gonna come to your birthday or Christmas, and then they wouldn't come to his birthday, and so the kids would be just devastated. Brendan kind of by a certain point was like, yeah, that's just Dad. But I remember Wesley being devastated all the time, and I remember Megan having some difficulty, but I remember it hitting Wesley more so, or being significantly difficult for Wesley. Yeah, and I just, yeah, that is Aunt Germain and Gary. I don't know, I don't remember how long they were together. I do remember once where he was out on probation, and my mom had known he was out on probation, because I guess when people are on probation, they let those who have peace orders against them know, so that they know, hey, these are the peace orders for this person, and, he's not to come near you, whatever. So, and of course, Aunt Germain would tell my mom and the family. So my mom saw him going into a restaurant and being wasted, and called the police. And so the police came to arrest him, and then that caused drama with the restaurant people, that she had kind of been friends with the restaurant people and all that sort of shit, and that caused a whole other realm of drama. But That Gary was interesting. I have never ever forgiven him for the abuse, and primarily for the hurting of my cousins. I think that's the part that I never forgave him for how he hurt my cousins and how they were hurt by his lack of commitment and lack of follow through. Years later, they would start to make amends, and I could not forgive him. I could not I couldn't pretend that that didn't happen. It wasn't like I was holding on to hatred, but I couldn't be like, okay, that happened. Oh well, let's move on. I couldn't do that. Um, but the kids did through time. I believe at one point Brendan had offered Gary to come and see his kid, Braxton, and Gary didn't show up, and Brendan was just like, yo, you ain't doing this to my kid. Peace out. You done. Don't know where Megan's relationship with him and her kids went. Wesley stayed close with his father. In my mind, Wesley had a lot of very similar characteristics of his father did. Not the abuse part, I'm not saying that, but just a lot of other characteristics of his father that I see in him anyway. I think. It's not like we're very close. But yeah, so, but yeah, Wesley stayed close with him. He passed away recently, and so me and my sister went. By that point, my mom had been dead, so me and my sister went to the celebration. And I mean, I truly am sorry that he passed away. He was a human. He was a human. And you know, the kids. Sorry, I call my cousins the kids just because I've always called them kids. Brendan, Megan, and Wesley did have mourning about with that piece of their life, and for that I do feel sorry for them. So, and I empathize with them. Not feel sorry for them, but I empathize with them. So, yeah, that's scary.